And welcome back to the Hot Lap. Big news coming into the Japanese Grand Prix weekend. I mean, all sorts of questions we had in our preview, whether Verstappen's going to win. Let's be fair, he's probably favourite. That's not exactly news, but let's get into those headlines. We've got Nico Hulkenberg commenting on Alonso's driving, yes. But then Alonso countering back saying, I will not change. The drivers are pretty much split on whether that penalty was a good thing or a bad thing. But obviously Russell is saying pretty much no penalty would have been opening a potential can of worms in respect of driving standards. And our opinion on that, Sainz on potential teams, they need to hurry up, he says, to sign him. I mean, the biggest unemployed driver, at least, for next year, Carlos Sainz. Sign him up, somebody, please. Vettel on a potential Formula 1 return. There's all these rumours about him having links with Mercedes, etc. What do you guys think? We've also got the FIA issuing legal action against the accusations in respect of Ben Sulayem. If you remember, he was accused of that Las Vegas incident, saying, no, this track is not going to be ready. And that Alonso penalty in Saudi Arabia, reversing it potentially. But the FIA has marked its own homework and said, no, we're good. Toto Wolff on Abu Dhabi. Yeah, he's got an interesting point in Abu Dhabi. He's still quite cross about it, understandably, let's be fair. So let's get into the first bit of news here. And it's Hulkenberg saying Alonso picked the wrong corner to try defensive games with George Russell. So he's pretty much criticised Alonso for choosing, as described in his own words, the wrong corner for that alleged brake testing, but slowing down unnecessarily, let's say. So as we know, Alonso was handed what would have been the equivalent of a drive-through penalty, where he slowed down for George Russell and George Russell crashed. Yes, you can make an argument George Russell kind of crashed all by himself. Having said that, there's a very good argument to suggest that had Alonso not been there, he wouldn't have crashed. So yeah, to the FIA race stewards, they deemed Alonso had driven in a potentially dangerous manner, slowing 100 metres earlier than normal, which they think contributed to Russell losing control behind him. And it was a fact. The telemetry does not lie. That is exactly what Alonso did. Now, while the manner of Alonso's section, it did surprise a lot of people, Hulkenberg thinks the Aston Martin driver was actually wrong to have driven the way he did. Now, asked by motorsport.com for his views, he said, my personal view, when I saw it all, I wasn't impressed with Fernando's tactics, to be honest. He carried on by saying, Melbourne, after all, it's kind of a street circuit. It's narrow. We approached the corner. Obviously, as you can see, 260 to 270 kilometres per hour. It is a much quicker corner than it used to be since they changed the track. And Hulkenberg was saying it's a blind exit. And if for whatever reason the flag system or someone is late and one of us would have T-boned George, and I think the outcome and the way he feels might have been quite different had there been a more serious accident. He said, so I think whilst the tactic is quite a common one in F1, in that particular corner, with that speed and the blind exit, I think it's the wrong corner to do it and produced quite a dangerous situation. So there we go. I mean, yeah, I think Hulkenberg has, and I'm going to agree with him. I'm sorry if any steadfast Alonso fans disagree with that, but I think what Alonso did was, as the steward said, potentially dangerous. If you look at our Alonso video we did, whether he's guilty or not, you just know he did it to David Coulthard in 2003, he did it to Robert Dornbos, he did it to Hamilton in Abu Dhabi. This is a tactic that Alonso does. Now, he is one of the best drivers out there. That's absolutely without a doubt. However, I kind of guess this is, in terms of him brake testing's really debatable, I think, in relation to that, but he definitely slowed down. I think the other ones, the Abu Dhabi one and David Coulthard one, in particular, definitely, I think are brake testing, whatever way you look at it. However, he kind of has been found out here. Now, yes, he is a very good driver. Yes, he can drive tactically, but the telemetry is the telemetry. So next up, though, in talking about this, because this is not going away anytime soon, Alonso has pretty said, it will not change, or Fernando Alonso. He stands defiant on that penalty, saying he's not going to change. Fair enough. So despite being hit with the hardest time penalty possible, that 20 seconds, Alonso says he's not going to change. This is from planetf1.com. So as you know, Russell retired from that Australian Grand Prix when he crashed on the penultimate lap, fighting Alonso. And he said, I think it will not change much on how we drive. And as we know, Russell, not really that impressed, but we get to him in a moment. And it talks about, obviously, the 100 metres. There was no contact. That's quite significant. But the sudden loss of downforce meant Russell lost control on his W15 in what was quite a fast corner. Accepting that Alonso's actions weren't extraordinarily dangerous, he feels that his rival not have been penalised would have set a bad precedent. And we'll get into that later. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there's no obligation to drive 57 laps in the same way, Alonso says. Sometimes we get a slower pace to save fuel, to save tyres, to save battery, but you don't break 100 metres before a corner, Alonso. This is just bull. I mean, in my opinion, this is what he does when he's done something wrong. It's classic. All F1 drivers, a lot of F1 drivers are the same. They can't admit when they made a mistake. And he says, and sometimes we go slow in the corners or into some sectors of the track to give the DRS the car behind because that will be a useful tool. All those things are completely normal, and it is, and it'll be forever in motorsports. So he had one penalty, probably a one-off, that will never apply again. Yeah, fair enough, Alonso. I mean, if that's your thing. But the issue is, suddenly, where has all this talk of him having something wrong with the car or the throttle he made out? And that is why I think Alonso ultimately, for me, has egg on his face in relation to it. He kind of changed his story. That's something he did when he held up Lewis Hamilton in Hungary, albeit, yes, he was very, very cross. If you want to see any more of our opinion on it, go back to that is Alonso guilty video that we did, I think shortly after the race. But next up, in relation to the headlines, we've got Russell talking about a potential can of worms. Yes, he said F1 risked a can of worms issue over the Alonso incident. So as you know, that 22nd place penalty was quite harsh. And George Russell has warned Formula One that had they not given a penalty, there would have been an open can of worms if it did not penalise Fernando Alonso at the Australian Grand Prix. Russell crashed, as we know, on the last but one lap, the penultimate lap, lost control by his own admission. Yes, it was him that lost control. Once again, had Alonso not been there, would Russell have lost control? Probably not. Alonso was deemed guilty of that potential dangerous driving. It says here, guilty. We said potential. And he said, I think it was a bit of a strange situation that happened. Russell told the media, including Racing News 365. He said, as I said at the time, I was totally caught by surprise. He carried on by saying, I was actually looking at the steering wheel, making a switch change in the straight, which we all do across the lap. He carried on saying it was too late, and then the next thing I know, I'm in the wall. Russell suggested not issuing an Alonso penalty would have opened the door for other drivers to perform similar moves, and that I completely understand. He said, I think if it were not to happen, not to have been penalised, it would have really opened a can of worms for the rest of the season. And also in junior categories, saying, are you allowed to brake in a straight? Are you allowed to slow down, change gear, accelerate, do something semi-erratic? I don't take anything personally with what happened to Fernando, said Russell, but it probably had bigger consequences than it should have. It's nothing personal. When the helmet is on, we're all fighters and competing. He said, when the helmet is off, you have to respect, you have respect for one another. So there's a lot of emotions in the moment, but we both have to move forward from this. And let's just draw a line underneath it now and get into the Japanese Grand Prix. So, next headline. And the next headline is, we've got here Carlos Sainz. Well, I've completely lost the headline now. Where has it gone? Nope, there's Ricciardo, there's Vettel. Okay, let's get into Ricciardo then. It's all gone Pete-tong, hasn't it? We'll get to Carlos Sainz in a bit. So let's talk Sebastian Vettel. He reveals a temptation for racing return after his F1 retirement, which I think is quite interesting. Personally, I don't think it's going to happen. It's kind of like I don't want to say a pipe dream, a Disneyland, like a Disney story, isn't it? A fantasy. But this is from gpfans.com, but it has been all over the last couple of days, the F1 interwebs, let's say. So after retiring from Formula One, Sebastian Vettel, he's been hinting at a potential return, and that's after testing a Porsche hypercar. Now, Vettel's emotional goodbye at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix marked the end of an era for the four-time champion. With Lewis Hamilton's surprise departure from Mercedes, and we have a very uncertain future for Sergio Perez, albeit, let's be fair, the first two races were good. Australia, there was a reason he wasn't so good, but up until then he was average at best. Now, while an F1 return does remain a possibility, it's saying, in relation to Vettel, he's also exploring other avenues. So the German recently got behind that Porsche 963 hypercar, slated to compete in the upcoming Le Mans 24 Hours, and it ignited something in Sebastian Vettel. Now, in an interview with Sky Sports, Vettel was asked what he has missed since hanging up his helmet. He said the thrill, the speed, I think the competition mostly really. He said driving quick is not the only thing, but it's really the competition. And Vettel responded by saying maybe, I don't know yet, when quizzed about a Le Mans debut. He carried on by saying, I've been testing, I was curious, so I wanted to see how it feels. And he said it's obviously a different discipline, it's still racing, but it's a different car, different discipline. Lots of things that excite me, lots of different things, not necessarily just looking at something behind the wheel, but also outside the car, he said. I'm tempted and I'm not. I'm obviously also looking for lots of other things, and there's lots of other things that do interest me outside of racing. And I don't think, I think Vettel will come back to racing, potentially, maybe Le Mans next year, but I do not think he will go back to Formula One. I think when you're not 100% sure, I mean, it's one of the, I think all sport, but with Formula One especially, you've got to almost be like 110% sure that you are really, really going to want to, kind of like do something about it. Absolutely you are. So we are just loading now the I'm trying to load the planetf1.com story in relation to Carlos Sainz, but saving that, let's talk about the FIA Legal Action threatened over Mohammed Ben Sulayem's F1 interference allegations. Yes, the FIA members club from the Americas have urged the FIA to take legal action against those it believes slandered motorsport's governing body, albeit they kind of do it all themselves, really, the FIA, to be fair, I think to a certain degree, with completely bad communication. But earlier this year, a whistleblower claimed Ben Sulayem had interfered in two of Formula One Grand Prix last season, and that was the Saudi Arabian and the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Now, the one allegation related to Saudi Arabia was said to have attempted to get a penalty for Alonso overturned, while the second, it was claimed he pushed to stop that certification for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. However, following a probe by the FIA compliance officer, which are apparently completely separate, nothing to do with the FIA, even though they are the FIA, they showed no wrongdoing. Fair enough, let's take it on face value, jokes aside. But in a show of support from the FIA member clubs and sport federations of the Americas, they've now recommended that the FIA take action against those trying, without cause, to slander the FIA and Ben Sulayem. Now, in the letter published by the FIA, the members club state the FIA Ethics Committee, it's George Orwell, isn't it, all over, 1984, composed of external and independent members, has unanimously issued the report in which they declare Mr. Mohammed Ben Sulayem, president of the FIA, is absolved of the unfounded accusations of interfering in the Formula One events held in Saudi Arabia and Las Vegas in 2023. Yes. So, I guess let's see what happens there. But let's reverse a tiny bit now, and I think we can maybe now talk about Carlos Sainz, finally. So, Carlos has issued a speed-up message to pretty much all of the potential 2025 F1 teams, padding his CV, as we know, with a magnificent Australian Grand Prix victory where he passed Max Verstappen for the lead. Yes, Max did have an issue. And he's talking, by his own admission, to pretty much all the F1 teams about 2025, with the Spaniard keen to get his future sorted. Now, as you know, dropped by Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton, even before the first race of the championship, Sainz emerged as, so far, the Scuderia's star driver. He beat Leclerc in Bahrain, albeit Leclerc had a problem then. He didn't happen in Saudi Arabia, and let's be fair and square, no argument. He was definitely the Ferrari #1 driver, the Ferrari star in Australia. So Planet F1 ahead of his, P1 ahead of his teammate in Australia at the Albert Park circuit. Sainz remains the only non-Red Bull driver to win a Grand Prix since 22. Depressing. That he did just 2 weeks after surgery, though, for his appendicitis, made it absolutely amazing. But the big question is what comes next, they're saying. The 29-year-old, soon to be 30, has been linked to Red Bull, Mercedes, Audi, Aston Martin. It's almost like, I think, unless Verstappen leaves Red Bull, it's Sainz that may well have the pick of the bunch. But it has been suggested that Red Bull's time frame and perhaps Mercedes could be the big stumbling blocks in those negotiations, with neither team in a hurry to sign their second 25 driver. Sainz, though, is ready for talks to speed up. Talking to a few, because that's what my management team and myself should do when I do not have a job for next year, he said. So we're talking to pretty much all of them. It's just a matter of obviously going more into detail and seeing the more realistic options and what are the best options for me and my future. He said, I don't have any news for you, nothing to say here today. The only thing I would say is, obviously it's time now to speed up everything a bit. Hopefully we can get it sorted sooner rather than later. Yeah. Absolutely, Carlos. I hope you get it sorted sooner rather than later. I mean, that would be amazing. This guy absolutely deserves a drive. Now, last but not least, Toto Wolff on Abu Dhabi 2021. Again, yes, Toto Wolff, he's given a withering assessment of a totally unimportant person after the drama of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So the controversy at the title decider at Yas Marina is now enshrined. It says of one of the seminal moments in the history of the sport. It absolutely is. It's going to be talked about for years, I think, when you look back, with events going against Lewis Hamilton on the night. Max Verstappen crowned getting his first world championship after what was an epic battle. Horrible way to end the season with all that controversy, but Wolff gives new comments about this totally unimportant person. So a late safety car, so only the lapped cars never happened before, separating Verstappen and Hamilton on track, rather than all the lap cars allowed to overtake the safety car late in the race, rather than the race finishing under safety car conditions after another lap behind it, which should have happened as prescribed under the FIA regulations. But the race started with 1 lap to go. It shouldn't have started with 1 lap to go. Verstappen pitted for soft tyres. Hamilton could not pit for soft tyres, because had he pitted for soft tyres, it would have been silly, because 1, the race should have finished under the safety car. 2, he would have appeared behind Verstappen in the queue. Ergo, Hamilton could not pit for soft tyres, because then he would be definitely giving away the championship. But at the time, with the with the laps, etc., they thought it was going to finish under the safety car, and it should have finished under the safety car. But Hamilton stayed out on those hard tyres, and at the turn 5 hairpin, Max Verstappen made his move to win the world championship. He still had to make the move, the pressure was on. But Hamilton was asked recently if he felt robbed by that night, and Wolff maintains that events in Abu Dhabi went against Mercedes. While he did not mention the former FIA race director, he who should not be mentioned by some, but we will, Michael Massey by name, his previous comments about him suggest he is one individual to which he is referring to regarding the outcome of the race. He said, when I think about it again, it's so unfair what happened to Lewis and the team that day. Yes. Wolff said in the recently released book, The Formula, written by Joshua Johnson and Jonathan Clegg, he said, and one individual didn't follow the rules and just let it happen. He is a totally unimportant person. He lives on the other side of the world and nobody is interested in him. He really is an utter pathological egomaniac. Fighting talk, Toto. And we'll end with that fighting talk. I mean, what do you think? I think Lewis Hamilton did get screwed. He should have been the champion in 2021. You can make an argument that Max Verstappen absolutely did deserve it. He drove out of his skin. But on the day, had the rules been followed, Max would be currently a 2-time champion. Not to take anything away from a very talented Dutchman who may, at the moment is in the running, in the conversation, if he continues, to be one of the greatest of all time, and will probably be in lots of people's top 10 lists already. So there we go. Anyway, if you liked what you see, please like and subscribe. That would be absolutely fantastic. I'd really, really appreciate that. If you're cross about the Abu Dhabi comments, comment below, let me know. Or maybe I'll do a video about all the comments, potentially, about all the cross people, or the people that agree with me. I mean, that would be great. And stay tuned for more Japanese Grand Prix news, views. We'll be talking about the action. It's practice tomorrow, and I'm sure it might be quite late in the day because work gets in the way, and so does real life. But we will be doing more videos. So stay tuned to the Hot Lap, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.